For more, I'm joined from Washington, D.C. by Congressman Brad Sherman, Democrat, representing California's 30th District. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the ranking member on the Subcommittee on Terrorism. Congressman, good to have you with us. As I just mentioned, UK officials reportedly have intelligence that al-Qaeda is planning an attack to take out 5 commercial airliners before Christmas. The Express newspaper, though, quotes an anonymous airport security source who said the threat is aimed at Europe. The U.S. has improved their security over the summer, but we have not. Should Americans traveling overseas be concerned?
We should always be concerned, but I think airport security is one of the things we've done well over the last 14 years. But there will always be rumors. We had a rumor this morning that they were going to go after servicemen and veterans on leave at their homes. So we can't allow ourselves to be tied into knots every time there's a rumor.
Now, this hearing you held on Tuesday had some alarming testimony from the State Department and Homeland Security on the threat to the U.S. from the 100+ Americans and 2,700 people with European passports who could get into the U.S. without a visa after going to fight for ISIL and al-Qaeda groups in the Middle East. The chairman of one of the subcommittees involved, Ileana Ross-Leighton, said that these individuals represent an unprecedented threat to U.S. national security. Do you agree?
I think it's one of many unprecedented threats to our national security. While ISIS may be able to strike at the American homeland and elsewhere outside the Middle East, the enemies of ISIS, the Shiite alliance of Hezbollah, Assad, and Tehran, and al-Nusra, which is also to say al-Qaeda, which they are a branch of, have already killed hundreds or thousands of Americans outside the Middle East. So you can't just aim at one target here. ISIS aspires to do to us what Hezbollah, what Iran, and what al-Qaeda have already done.
And that was a point that you made quite strongly in the hearing. And you also took a tough stance in the statement you made, saying Westerners who fight for ISIL shouldn't just be monitored if and when they go home. They should be put behind bars.
Well, the UN Security Council said the same thing, and a UN Security Council resolution requires all member states to criminalize going to the Middle East and fighting with ISIS. And I don't think you can draw a line between somebody who's part of the ISIS army and somebody who shoots a gun as part of the ISIS army. This idea that ISIS soldiers could walk the streets of Copenhagen while monitored is simply absurd.
And you noted that destroying ISIL is impossible without huge American casualties, which you said was also impossible in the present decade. So what are we going to have to do? Are we going to have to live with this threat?
We have to minimize the threat, we have to live with the threat, and we have to minimize the fear and the dislocation caused by the threat. We are not going to be living in an entirely peaceful world, and certainly not this decade. And it's not like one enemy will solve the problem. The cyberspace, the ideological space, and the physical space occupied by ISIS, even if ISIS were destroyed, might be occupied by other forces that also mean us harm.
Right.
So we have to have homeland defense, and we have to hit ISIS to control them and to keep them from being able to take Baghdad and other important targets.
And talking about the physical space, that's something you raised, that you question what would replace ISIL if we managed to destroy ISIL. So you think that something worse could follow?
Well, keep in mind, ISIS is or ISIL, if you want to call them that, has seized territory from the Assad regime, which is part of that Hezbollah, Assad, Tehran axis, which has done us so much harm and is developing nuclear weapons. Also, the Baghdad regime was virtually a satellite of Iran until they faced the ISIS threat and turned to the United States for help and got rid of Maliki. So there are al-Nusra elements, al-Qaeda elements, Iranian and Hezbollah elements that may very well fill in and replace ISIS if you were to magically destroy it, which I don't think we're capable of doing anytime soon.
Final question. You also made a point that the U.S. needs to hire people with expertise in Islamic theology and law to get more Muslim leaders to help in reducing the threat from worldwide terrorism. But haven't we been talking about outreach and PR campaigns since the days after 9/11? Is it just that those plans have not been executed properly?
Well, we have the outreach. What we don't have is the research. And keep in mind, the State Department has 1,000 lawyers. I think they ought to hire 1 or 2 experts in Islamic jurisprudence, whether they be practicing Muslims or others who have the expertise. Because it's not enough to say, look at what ISIS did. They beheaded somebody, it's evil. One must be able to turn to the Quran, to turn to the Hadith, and show how ISIS is making a mockery of a great world religion. And you cannot appeal to Islamic jurists unless you can cite Hadith, unless you can cite Quran, unless you can do all the things that you would do in working before any other jurist anywhere in the world. You need legal expertise to get the Islamic legal scholars to be on our side.
Congressman Brad Sherman, some very important and thought-provoking points. It's good to have you with us.